Here are 4 reasons why it might not be a good idea to use leverage all the time. Now, keep in mind, as an investor, you're probably going to end up using leverage at some point in your investment career. And to be honest, I've used a lot of leverage in many of my investments, but the first thing that I did was I tried it without leverage and I proved the model, I proved the system, and I knew that I could make this thing work. And then I started adding leverage because leverage simply accelerates what's going on. So if good things are happening, if everybody's making money, the investment is profitable, then leverage just makes the investment even more profitable. However, if the investment just isn't very profitable, maybe it's not quite working out for you, maybe something went wrong, remember, leverage is just going to amplify what's already going on. Leverage isn't going to make you lose money or make money. Leverage is simply going to magnify that loss. And so if you took a loss on an investment, you could have lost more than your initial investment because you used leverage. And so it's very, very important to realize that leverage is useful, but it can also be very, very dangerous. So now that we know what leverage is, here are 4 reasons why you might not want to use leverage on your next investments. If you're totally brand new to this investment, it's a brand new investment, you've never done this investment before, it's probably not a good idea to use leverage. And here's why. If this isn't something that's proven that you've done 10, 20, 30 times over, if it's a brand new thing, you don't really know what's going to happen, right? And so you probably don't really know what good things can happen, but you also don't know what bad things could happen. So I always love to test investments myself, and I try them out and I see what I can do with my own capital before I use leverage. I want to make sure that I can create a consistently profitable system, not just something that happens 1 time or 2 times. I want to make sure that every single time, or at least most of the time when I make this investment, it's profitable. And that's why I know I can use leverage, because I don't have to put up that much capital up front, but I can use leverage to fill in that gap for me and make me a lot more money, as if I invested way more money than I initially invested. But remember, before that, I'm testing these investments with my own capital without leverage before I start applying leverage to the investment, because it can be a great thing, but it can also be a really, really bad thing if misused and you're over leveraged. The second reason why I might not use leverage on an investment is if I have little experience in that industry or with that particular investment. So if I started investing into an industry which I've never invested into before, I might not want to use leverage. So for example, if I've never invested into, let's say, a windmill farm is probably profitable. It's probably a good business, but I'm probably not going to go out and get leverage on my first one. Maybe I'll buy like 1 windmill or find a way to get fractional ownership of a windmill. Or maybe I could just buy equity in a company that already runs a windmill farm. And I can see the operations, I can see how much money they're making. I can gain some more information on that investment before going all in and just getting a ton of leverage and potentially risking my entire investment because I wanted to get leverage right up front. You never want to get greedy with investments like that, because you never know what's going to happen. And you always want to have at least a little bit of experience in the industry before you start going all the way in and you start using leverage to try and multiply your gains, which you don't even know if they're going to happen yet. And so I always personally go into these investments with the mindset that, okay, I'm going to test this thing out on my own. I'm going to see what I can do. I'm going to gain some experience, and then I'm going to apply leverage to the investment, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be on the losing side of an investment where I applied leverage, because that can be a pretty big loss, and I don't think anybody wants to experience a loss when leverage is applied. Now, can you avoid losses in your investment career? Absolutely not. I don't know a single investor who's never lost an investment. Everybody loses on an investment every once in a while, and so the faster that you can train yourself to understand that that's just part of the process. You know, like in a business, if I'm holding physical inventory, I'm always going to have to invest money for physical inventory. Some of that inventory might be damaged, some might get lost, some might not be good for the customer and it gets returned, right? That's just cost of goods sold. Those are just my expenses. And I understand that when I'm running a brick and mortar business, those are just my expenses. I'm going to take some losses, right? And so the same thing happens when you're investing. And so you have to come at it with a business mindset and understand that, okay, if I invest into this thing, it might work out, it might not work out. But that's why we have diversification. That's why diversification is so important, because we can simply diversify. The chances of every single one of your investments losing at the same time, it's not as high as maybe one investment failing. I want to build a portfolio where my investments aren't influenced by each other and I'm able to generate a consistent cash flow for myself as an investor. The third reason why you might not want to use leverage on an investment is the risk of over leveraging. So you could go out and you could buy real estate with maybe 15 or 20% down. Is that always a good idea? I personally don't do that, because I know that if something happens and maybe rates change or my payments change or maybe my rentals aren't as occupied as I I thought they would be, that puts me at risk if I'm trying to leverage so much. But if I go up to maybe 30 or 40 or 50% as a down payment, well, now my monthly payments are much lower. Now I'm not over leveraged. And honestly, if you look back at history, there are so many examples of people losing valuable real estate because they were over leveraged. The only way that you can lose in real estate is if you're over leveraged, or you maybe made a poor decision when investing. But for the most part, most people lose if they're over leveraged. And so you want to make sure that you're not that person that's over leveraged, because if you're not putting enough down, you're trying to stretch yourself too thin, that can put your portfolio at risk. And the fourth reason why I may not use leverage on an investment is if I believe that investment can be very volatile. So a volatile investment could be, for example, a cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrencies tend to be pretty volatile. And so I know that I'm probably not going to go to the bank and take a $10 million loan out to buy any cryptocurrency. It doesn't matter which one, but let's say the more volatile one. Because guess what? I'm going to have to make payments to the bank. But if I'm investing into something that's volatile, I don't really know what the value of my investment could be. In a day or two, it could drop by 50%. That $10 million investment could drop down to $5 million. Well, that's a big risk, right? I'm going to have to make monthly payments to the bank. But if my investment just dropped down in value, that means that I'm going to be losing money. Now, it's all great when it works the other way. I take a $10 million loan, I buy, let's say, Bitcoin at $10 a coin, and then it goes up to 60,000. That's probably one of the best investments you could have possibly made. But again, how do we know that it's going to stop at 60,000 or 70,000? We don't know. And so the chances of you pulling out at the right time, that's another big risk. So I personally do not like to use leverage on super volatile assets. I like to use leverage on safer assets, stuff that doesn't really move too much. It's just more consistent, more stable. Real estate is a great example of that. Physical assets, private jets, yachts, exotic cars, those things tend to stay pretty stable, especially when you're choosing the right location, let's say for a house or for a building, the right quality, and also, for example, with cars, if you're choosing the right models. If you're choosing the right models, they're not going to drop or rise in value very drastically, and that means that they're not going to be as volatile and they're safer to use leverage for. Alrighty guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.